Thanks all for being here. Jeff, let me start with you. Can you talk about how this project got started?
Sure. It started very simply. I'd been doing news for a long time, and I hadn't been listening to music for about 10 years, and it was the beginning of the Bush administration, and I got out of news, and I needed some solace from horrendous events that I had no idea they would get even worse. And I started listening to jazz. Charlie Christian, first the great guitarist, and Charlie Christian led me to Lionel Hampton, led me to Benny Goodman, and Benny Goodman led me to read a biography of Goodman that had a short mention of Chick Webb. And there was just something about, it was like one paragraph, and I couldn't find out more, and I got curious. And there was something about his upstart battle, the odds against him, and the fact that, you know, he beat Benny Goodman in this titanic battle of the bands that just hooked me. And a very simple 7 years later, we had the movie. Well, not so simple.
Voza, this is really history from the ground up. I mean, this is really telling us a lot about America and the changes that were happening. Can you talk a little bit about that and the place of the Savoy in Harlem?
Well, for me, Jeff talked about how he got interested, and it was very interesting how I met Jeff, because Jeff started, as he started doing his research, calling around to institutions in Harlem, and one of those calls came into the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. And through that call, when Jeff mentioned what he was trying to do, they mentioned that he should give a call to me, and we further discussed. So Jeff is on, the West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast, and I've never met him, and just listening to him describe what he wanted to do, I knew that I wanted to be involved. My early history with the Savoy is that when I graduated from junior high school, my prom was at the Savoy Ballroom. I went to the Frederick Douglass School, which was right across the street from the Savoy Ballroom. And as I got older, and I'm a long-term Harlemite, I used to stand out in front of the Savoy and watch the guests arrive. And so just speaking to Jeff, understanding that he wanted to really focus on this great emporium for music and those individuals who frequent it, I just said, count me in. And that began the relationship. In the early part of the film, and even with the early interviews when it opened, I knew some of those people personally also. So the Frankie Mannings, the Gertrude Jeanette, and Dr. Mario Pettione, they were somewhat mentors to me, and John Isaacs, a basketball player. So it was just exciting that I mentioned them. Jeff had already had them on his radar, and we made things happen.
Mr. Haynes, for you, as you were becoming a drummer and growing up, what was the reputation of Chick Webb? Was he somebody the drummers spoke about or saw as an example, or someone they could compare themselves to?
Well, I don't really know about that, but I do remember when I was very young, I had the record Liza. I don't know if you remember that. Da 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 da, be da 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 da. And he was, I don't know, I was a teenager when I bought the record. In those days, you just bought one track at a time, and I played that record to death. I mean, he was just drumming all over. It seems like the tune would end, and it seemed like he was still playing a solo. I mean, he just impressed me. I never did get a chance to see him live, but I do remember listening to the recording. And Ella Fitzgerald was with the band during that time.
If you could sum up what was unique or different about his playing, is there a certain quality that he has that you would point out that really makes Chick Webb stand out?
Well, I never did see him in person, but this record that I had, Liza, he was playing beyond the bar line. When it would end, it seemed like he was still playing a solo. The feeling of his whole sound and feeling that he got from the drums was tremendous.
Could you, both of you, talk a little bit about the subtitle of the film, The Music That Changed America, and talk about why you added that and your thoughts about that?
I love what Dr. Muriel Pettioni said when she said, in spite of ourselves, music is what really brings us together. Music is a great combiner. You know, we see so much in our country right now, look at this election, fanning divisions for often bad reasons. And sometimes I think that music is like one of the few noble things that we've really done. And so truly, the music and the dance helped change America. The Savoy Ballroom, bringing blacks and whites together, being on a dance floor, socializing, when you couldn't do it anyplace else. It's sort of like Rosa Parks' bus 20 years before. You can't really measure the impact life by life. And one of the things that was haunting about Chick's life was that it had basically slipped away. It had basically been forgotten. I remember going to a website that was dedicated to the great Baltimore jazz leaders, and they had Cab Calloway, U.B. Blake, and Billie Holiday, no mention at all of Chick. So, I mean, hopefully you see the impact in his life and through all these different people, but it was just about ready to disappear. So it's great to help bring it back.
And I'm really pleased to be and proud to be a part of this project because it's informative, it's educational, it's a reflection of the times that we lived in, and it also, like Jeff said, it's just so timely that we're doing this now. And our goal is to let as many people see that and understand that really culture breaks down all barriers of misunderstanding. And maybe you don't have to say it in words, but it's done in feeling. And through watching this, you can just see and feel the love that people had when they came in contact with each other at the Savoy Ballroom.
Okay, let's get some questions from all of you. Brad?
Roy, of the musicians that were here in the film, had you seen a lot of them live and worked with some of the, who else had you worked with many musicians?
Had you seen, of the musicians in the film, had you worked with many of them or seen them live?
Well, could you just name
Dizzy
some-
Gillespie.
Dizzy, naturally, yes. I was just
Ella?
Ella. I played with Ella. Let me try to remember what years that would have been. Wow. I think I played with her in the 50s, if I remember exactly. Count Basie. I never really worked much with, I was always close to the Basie band because when I was a teenager, I was listening to probably one of the great drummers ever, Joe Jones, and we called him Papa Joe. You know, great thing about that, I felt like he was a father to me even before I thought that was fashionable to, you know, to have him thought of like that. But that period was very great for me, and I'm thankful to be here now and still playing.
As are we. Yes.
Can you go further into the relationship with Ella and Chick and how, as performers, when you're doing this film, you sort of got into that relationship? It's so powerful, Ella Fitzgerald.
It was
Talk a little bit, let me just repeat it for everyone.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between Chick Webb and Ella Fitzgerald?
Yeah, and one of the funny things is that history can belong to whoever decides to report it, whether it's true or not. So if you read about the discovery of Ella Fitzgerald, even Duke Ellington, who we all revere, claims that it was his idea, that you know, he was the one who told Chick about Ella. And Charles Linton famously says that he was the one who brought Ella to Chick. So trying to reclaim what might have actually happened was part of the process. But it's amazing when you think about what a long and important career she had, how much came from the training and understanding that she got from Chick. You know, not just musically, but as an individual, as a young woman as well. I think we covered some of it in the film about how Chick taught her work habits, you know, phrasing and understanding the music. All that early training came through Chick and through Chick's dedication. And he was a taskmaster. He would drive everyone kind of crazy because he loved to rehearse. But she took that inside herself as well.
Yes.
Can you talk about the casting
By casting, are you talking about the voices that are used? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
In your casting process, was it a battle of elimination? Did you guys disagree on stuff? Did you get people from listening? What was the enthusiasm level of the actors?
The question is the use in the film of the voice of well-known actors and others for the voices of these jazz greats. And could you talk about that process, why you did that, and also was there a short list? How did you decide who would be what voice, things like that?
Sure, and one of the things we wanted to do in the film was make it as vibrant and as immediate as possible. And part of that, the idea from the very beginning was not to have a documentary that sort of told you what to think or told you how an expert feels you should feel, but we wanted to have as many stories that you could experience so that it could be as firsthand as possible. And sometimes that was through people who were really there. I mean, to have Edward Wilson know Chick in the 1920s is a wonderful immediate connection. But we also wanted to do that through the actual words of sort of a Hall of Fame group of jazz musicians who knew Chick or were touched by Chick. The folks we ended up getting, it was a long process. I mean, except for Tyne Daly, who I knew, everyone was through, just a cold call. I would, send them an email, I'd call them, and 9 months later or whatever. I mean, with Andy Garcia, who I always wanted to be Mario Bozza, it literally took over 2 years to get him to say yes, but he was fantastic. So there may have been some other people we approached along the way, but I will say that, I offered them like no money. It was SAG minimum. And, for someone like Janet Jackson, I'm sure SAG minimum is, the cost of breath mints. And yet, they were just phenomenal. I mean, Bill Cosby, we did his VO here in New York, and there was a complication in the studio, and there was an opera singer singing next door, and we had to keep stopping and starting, and we had all these complications, and he was just so focused on doing it right, and whenever I have a tendency to over-apologize, or explain myself, and he was just there with sort of fatherly lessons. He says, don't apologize for yourself, just be confident, it's great, and we'll do it, and I want to make it right. And he knocked himself out. He didn't have to do that. Janet Jackson was the same thing. We scheduled about an hour of time, and she had never done VO before, and she really, really wanted to get it right. So we worked on the lines and talked about it, and I was just knocked out at her attitude. Everybody brought the kind of focus that you assume that they would bring to a multi-million-dollar project, and I think that is one more example of how Chick brought people together, and all these years later, he's still doing it.
Can I ask all of you, one thing that really struck me when I first saw the film was when I started going to jazz clubs in the sort of early 70s, late 60s, no one ever imagined jazz was dance music. I mean, people sat very still and listened and whatever. And one of the things that you really bring in this film, that jazz was dance music, and people really went to dance as well as to listen. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe the transition away from that era?
Well, I just remember interviewing Roy, and Roy, I don't know if you remember, but I filmed your interview at Dizzy's Club at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and we had to put a rug under your feet because all the time that you were talking about music, you kept tapping your feet on the wood floor.
Wait a minute.
This is you.
What was that again? I was tapping my feet.
That's right. First of all, you have the best shoes I've ever seen.
Best shoes.
And when I did the interview with you, I had sort of a muffle blanket in my light kit, and I had to put it out underneath your chair.
When was this? When?
Well, this is a couple years ago, probably like...
A couple of years ago, you had to put a rug under my feet?
Because whenever you talked about music, whenever you're talking about the people that we were discussing for the film...
I was moving?
You were moving, but more than that, your feet were constantly tapping, like the music was still in you. One of the things I love in the film is when we do the tribute to Tisket at Tasket, and you do a little scat version of Tisket, when you line it up, you didn't hear the music, at the time, but when you line up your scat version of Tisket, it matches note by note what was really going on.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
My scat version?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Where was I? When did I do this scatting?
This is all when we did the interview together. But I was really amazed at the way the music kept living through your body, and I think that's what the combination of music and dance can do, whether it's you as a performer
right.
or Norma Miller or. You
I
know,
would like to see this, man.
well,
When-
I have a DVD for you, so you can see it anytime.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but music can take you over, and I think that connection between the musician and the dancer, or even someone sitting on a couch and feeling it in their corpuscles, that's a miraculous
Could
thing.
feel the music, man.
Yeah, and you still feel it, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
There's another connection. We have John Isaacs. He was a member of the 1939 Harlem Wrens basketball team, and they performed. They played basketball at the Renaissance Casino, which was another major dance emporium. The basketball games would happen in the gym, and during halftime, a jazz band would play during halftime. So all across the country in these tournaments with black basketball teams, there was this opportunity for the bands to play and people dancing during the half times and then after. So that kind of relationship, even back then, was very, very apparent. And again, they were big bands, and that was part of sports and entertainment coming together.
Can I say one thing about John Isaacs? I think a film like this and just life in general can teach you that there can be heroes of all stripes in daily life, and you never know when challenges will rise up to test you, and how you relate to that will define what kind of person you are. And John Isaacs did something really amazing. I don't know if you know John, but the Harlem Wrens was a championship black basketball team, and they only had a few chances to play against white players. And at one point, they won the world championship. This was like in 1939, and they were given these T-shirts that said, "Is that our cue that we're almost done?" Sorry, I'm having a tumor. And they're giving, you can correct the story, but it was giving a shirt that says something like championship Negro team. And John ripped the Negro off the team because he didn't, off the shirt, because he didn't want to be limited and targeted in that way. Is that, how close was I?
You're very good, Jeff.
Yeah. Everyone in the film was remarkable.
That's great. All the way in the back there, ma'am.
Just curious, the first picture of the Big Apple in the circle, just curious as to where you got the picture from, because I lost the bid on that on eBay.
It was a still photo?
Yes.
It was, well, I can't really recall because I think we ended up having like 1,200 photos. But for instance, the footage we shot with Frankie Manning in South Carolina was because in an earlier documentary, I lost a bid for a picture of Martha Graham to some guy who I didn't know, and it turned out that he was a swing dancer, and he helped arrange the shoot with Frankie. So it's kind of weird how life circles around, and you never know. I'll give you a copy if you can't find it.
I have a picture because the seller sent me a copy before he sent it to the, to buy.
Well, I have 1,200 more if you want them.
And we'll be selling them here at the Walter. Yes. Yes, sir.
Question, you've got some good footage there of Gene Krupa, some scenes with Louis Bellson, there's even a little short clip with Joe Jones, but except for one 10-second clip near the end of Chick, everything we see of Chick Webb is in still photographs as opposed to live performance, which we really hunger to see, and I'm just wondering why that was in your cutting and archival research.
Questions about the footage of Chick Webb. Is there more of it? And if there was, why didn't you include it?
If we had it, we would have used it. That's all there was. It's haunting when you think about it. Obviously, when it's 4 seconds. And when you think about that 4 seconds, that director, that crew must have shot, an hour with Chick, and that's all that was left. If you saw that shot from the 1929 film After Seven, and by the way, that's even one more example of the insidious racism of the time, where this bizarre hyper racist attitude would go into everything. So it was always colored band, or it wasn't After Seven, it was After Seven, But anyway, that After Seven film, Chick was actually filmed in that. We have a still from it, and then we have the film, but they cut Chick out because he looked strange. So that's all that's left. And Chick's nephew, Brad, told me that the family had boxes of Chick stuff at their house, and they just threw it away. Van Alexander had a box of stuff that he took west, and it disappeared from the truck. We're lucky for what we have and haunted by what we don't have.
There's another footnote. Frankie Manning, we considered him the in-house dancer at the Savoy. Well, Frankie Manning used to choreograph for major motion pictures, but they would never put his name in the credits or give him credit. And he would tell us that story of all of these dance films that came out in the 30s and 40s and 50s where he actually choreographed the music. But again, because of racism, they would not give him the credit.
Yes, ma'am.
You had some great footage. I wanted to know, how long did it take you to put this whole project together, and what other challenges did you have?
How long did it take you to do the film, and what were some of the special challenges in finding all this footage and photographs?
Most of the time I was working on other things at the time. I was working for the company that produced the show Cops, and they let me use their camera, and I would go out and scout a show, and then I would take a couple days off and film with Richard Gale or with Norma. It was a long time, and frankly, sometimes you feel like you're crazy. Why am I doing this? And then other times something miraculous would happen. Either someone was, you'd meet Roy Haynes, or someone would all of a sudden say, "Hey, I have this photo for you," or some wonderful thing would happen. So you would keep being discouraged and then reminded at how wonderful people could be at the same time. We had a wonderful editor, Jamal El-Amin. And it's funny, when I first met Jamal, we talked about doing the film, I didn't even know that his parents lived just a few blocks from the Savoy and used to go there when they were kids. So it's funny how life can swirl around. So there were a lot of challenges. Whenever you try to make something like this, the usual challenge is money. And if there's a billionaire in the room who wants to fund my next film, I have my card waiting. But then again, you can be so touched by the people that you work with that it compensates for everything.
Maybe one more? Takers? Okay, right here, sir.
Have you considered bringing this to the Smithsonian or anything national foundation?
Yeah, what is the future of the film after its screenings at the New York Film Festival?
Well, this will be the peak, and it's downhill from here. But
Thanks, Chad.
the Smithsonian's been very nice. One of the curators of the Smithsonian, a guy who wrote a wonderful biography of Duke Ellington called Beyond Category, John Edward Hassey, was sort of an early mentor and gave me some good guidance. And several folks at the Smithsonian have suggested showing the film for Jazz History Month or Black History Month. So we'll do that down the road. I mean, ultimately, we obviously want to keep having the film released and keep having people see it in other ways. What's that? I'm sorry? Yeah. So we'll be working on that, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I want to thank Jeff Kaufman, Voza Rivers, and especially Mr. Roy Haynes for being here today. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming as well.
We would like to thank you, too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
My pleasure.